And even as hard as my staff works, every little comma and every little phrase, it is pretty tough to dissect all of that. That's why the whole process is so bad. But I protect myself against ever endorsing that, because it doesn't take long to find out what their goals are and what their intent is, making government bigger, raising more taxes. But even as bad as it is, it's even worse than some people think. Barney Frank is a big regulator. He loves this stuff, and I work with him on some issues, but obviously on this regulatory bill I did not. And he, I believe, was honestly surprised about how much more power was given to the SEC. Because he has a sort of an instinct of more transparency, and he actually wants to do something about that. And he is probably the most informed person about that bill as it was going through. I'm amazed at how much detail he knows, but he can't possibly know every single thing the Fed and the SEC does behind the scenes. It sticks this stuff in at the last minute, and it's just absolutely out of control, and that's why this system will end and has to be replaced by something else.
Again, Congressman Ron Paul joins us. Remember, a month and a half ago, Senator DeMint got up and reported that 94% of the Senate bills are never even read and are literally written by the special interest lobbyists, many of them foreign lobbyists. This is a foreign corporate takeover of our government. If the president can launch wars without Congress declaring it, the private central banks can issue all this fiat currency to their enrichment and our detriment. But he said in his speech he didn't know the number on the House. Do we have any idea of what number of House bills are never even read and are brought out 30 minutes before they're passed?
Not exactly. The big problem would be that some of those bills float around and you can read them, but when the night before they're due to come to the floor, they go to the Rules Committee, and the Rules Committee has tremendous license to change things. The chairman of the Rules Committee can have a manager's amendment, which was used originally to change some grammatical things and just a few technical things, technical changes. But now they use the manager's amendment to replace the whole bill. That's what they did with the Patriot Act. Bob Barr and others tried to protect us to a degree, against the Patriot Act. He worked months on, or at least several weeks on that. But when the manager's amendment came from the Rules Committee, they put the whole new bill into it, which meant that nobody could read it. So it depends on the particular issue. But even if the bill's available, the financial reform bill was available and discussed in a lot of hearings and a lot of talk, but that still doesn't mean that many members would have had a total comprehension and been able to read this bill. It is so massive. So I would say that if you were talking about how often all the members read everything that's being presented, I would think that it's less than 5% where people can say, oh, I've read the whole bill and I fully understand it. That just very rarely happens.
And that's why you're known as Dr. No, and they tried to criticize you, because if you can't read some 3,000-page bill and they give it to you an hour before it's time to vote, it would be immoral for you to pass it.
No, that should be an easy no for everybody, and hopefully what's going on in this country, it'll get easier, because the American people are sick and tired of this. I mean, sometimes they just say, why don't you guys read the bills? Why don't we do anything else? Let's have a delayed time. Read the bills. But that I think is good, that the American people are getting very upset with the status quo, and I think they're wise enough now to be very cautious about saying, well, if we just elect the Republicans, they'll take care of us, so this is a Republican versus Democrat issue. It isn't. It's the people who believe in big government and big taxes and a lot of war and welfare against the people who have to pay all the bills, and all they want is to be left alone.
Congressman, even establishment political analysts, as you know, admit there's been one of the biggest political realignments in history against the Democrats and the Republicans. Almost every pro-establishment candidate, whether they be Democrat or Republican, are losing in the primaries, and great patriots like your son, Dr. Rand Paul, are winning. That's got the system panicked. And the Daily Poll ran a story yesterday, says Ron Paul to run for president in 2012 will announce in January 2011. I don't have any inside knowledge, but knowing you, you understand you'll be able to inject real issues into the debate. Your health is good, and of course it's great right now. I mean, I would imagine being a man of honor, you're going to run, but this has some supposed inside official who's unnamed saying you've decided to announce in January of 2011. Congressman, I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up to you.
Yeah, well, I don't know where they got that. They didn't get it from me. And the truth is what I've been saying for many, many months. I haven't decided to run. I haven't decided not to run. And it will obviously not be now or linked. It would not be this year. And it'll depend a lot on what I perceive as support. You know, a lot of people like what I'm doing, and they encourage me. But there are some that saying, "Well, it's time for you to take a rest. Somebody else is about to do it." You know, that sort of thing. So I need to know, if the support is really out there. But certainly, I gave no inside information just recently at Orlando, as was reported.
But I would imagine if Rand does win and people support him, that's going to be a big plus for you running for president.
Yeah, I think this is all a benefit of what's happening to show that the status quo is something that needs to be changed. So whether it's Rand's race or others, I think it's all very positive.
When your son said, "I've got a message to Washington, the Tea Party's coming, no to your carbon tax, no to your elitism, no to your globalism," it scared him. So they've run 5 hoaxes. They claimed he wanted to get rid of the Civil Rights Act when he said, "Excuse me, I can't hear you. Yes, no, I don't want to get rid of it." They claimed he wasn't a doctor, complete hoax. They have been caught. This is mainstream news, sending people from the Democratic Party to pose as racist supporters of Rand. They then, even 3 days after that lady admitted that nobody tied her up, nobody made her take bong hits, none of this happened. Still, no retractions from GQ, no retractions from Huffington Post. They're still going with it. My listeners made Rand Paul hoax the #1 search term last Friday, and hundreds of publications read our breakdown, saw that she'd retracted in the Washington Post. And so now it's out there that was a hoax. But I'm worried if he doesn't sue them or at least stand up to them, next they'll say he killed Kennedy. Next they'll say he killed Jesus. Next they'll say that he burned the Reichstag. Next he'll say that, he let the cows out of the gate. I mean, next he'll say he's causing the wildfires in Russia. I mean, there's no end to how desperate they are. Yeah. I'm really worried about your son.
Well, there's a couple ways you can handle that. I do think you have to answer back. You just can't let it sitting out there, but you can't get overly defensive or it gives them too much credibility. And I've been under those attacks, too, because you know, and I'm sure you share my views about how outrageous the war on drugs is and how that violates our civil liberties. So I've never supported the war on drugs, yet I detest the use of drugs for kids and all that. But they used that against me in '96, and I put a TV ad on and I defended myself and explained why it's the war on drugs, not the drugs that I promote. And I think the other thing that we did that is so important is to try to get an image out there. The more, I can say a lot of things that might be controversial, but by this time, the people in Texas and people in my district know me, and they trust me, and when they say, "Oh, Ron Paul wants to give kids drugs," nobody believes that stuff. Like all these things you're suggesting, nobody's going to believe that. The more people know Rand. So when they get to know him and see him as a physician with kids, last night I talked to him on the phone, which is rather rare, and he was out at a soccer game with his kids, So if they see that, I told him, I said, what you need to do is just make sure people know who you are. But I agree with you. You also have to be alert. You have to be willing to defend. I think it actually happened. They didn't threaten, but they insinuated that they might have to consider legal action. I think that's finally when there was a slight backing down on that, then they finally got the information from the girl and said, "Oh, no, I really didn't say that." So I think...
Well, my point is, Congressman, it shows how desperate they are. I mean, this is some of the dirtiest tricks I've ever seen, because they know he's a real bona fide, true constitutionalist, and if he becomes the leader of the Tea Party, that is going to supercharge you, perhaps even winning the presidency. We have to think big and realize that this is possible, and we have to realize that they're going to run other dirty tricks against you, and we've got to understand that's why it's so important to get behind Campaign for Liberty and donate, to get behind Rand right now, letters to the editor, everything. We've got to get him in the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, and so far things are looking pretty good. You know, I think he's holding his lead, and that's good. There's still a few months. But I think your word of caution is legitimate because there's still a couple of months to go, and if they've done that much already, you know, at the end, when they think you don't have enough time to answer or clarify, they may throw a lot more mud around.
They may claim he's really a vampire. I mean, they may say he's the Loch Ness Monster.
Well, let's hope they get over the top. I think they are over the top, and I think they've lost their credibility. So people are a little more sophisticated than I think a lot of people give them credit for. I assumed for many years, well, if they ever know what I really believe in, how little government I believe in, I couldn't possibly get elected. So sometimes I even surprise myself when people really don't like big government. They want to be left alone.
Well, you know what Victor Hugo said, Congressman? No army can stop an idea whose time has come. And do you agree that we've seen a massive realignment and the pendulum is now swinging back, but we're in the maximum phase of danger because the ruling class is going to try to keep this crony socialist system in place?
Yeah, they'll be desperate, and they have still a lot of power. They have a lot of guns, and they have the political power. But the ideas, like you say, are more powerful than the army. So I want to always work real hard at remaining optimistic that present our views, and we can overcome all the bad ideas that we're suffering from today.
Congressman, in closing, I hate to bring up what I see as distractions, but the Ground Zero Mosque is now the biggest story in the country and is a diversion. This is kind of a liberal sect of Muslims, but regardless, I don't like ever agreeing with Obama, and I do think they should look for another place just because the community's gotten so outraged. But I am against government coming in and saying what people can do religiously and violating the First Amendment. What's your view on that, A? And B, Pelosi, though, saying she wants to investigate anybody who's upset about it, implying that people don't have a right to be upset. So we're seeing tyranny from both sides.
Yeah, you know, and I think it's a big distraction. This is a grand distraction from the real issue. You know, the country's engulfed in this war as well as this financial crisis, and they're spending all the time on this. But to me, it should have been a grand opportunity, and you really touched on the opportunity, because this is a property rights issue. Who owns the property? And it's also a civil liberties issue. It's a freedom of speech issue. And this to me, is so different than what the liberals say. The liberals say, well, we'll allow you to speak, but not protect your private property. Conservatives say, well, we don't worry too much about your speech, but we want to protect your private your property rights. You know, they want to regulate all the things that we do in stores and how much salt you can use in restaurants and all that. So then when you get a guy like Bloomberg, he's up there saying, oh, yeah, this is a property rights issue. But think of what Bloomberg does to property rights issue. I think this is a tremendously opportune time for us to point out that property rights and civil rights are one and the same. But I think what's behind this, it drives the neocons nuts because they can't pursue this international war on terrorism without having a hated enemy, and the hated enemy is Islam. And I don't believe for a minute that the, quote, religion of Islam is our enemy.
Congressman, we're out of time. Look forward to speaking to you again. God bless you.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
We'll be back.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
Hi, folks. This is Alex Jones asking you for a minute of your time to tell you about soap. Not detergents, but good old-fashioned pure soap made by the Cal Ben Soap Company, a family-owned and operated American company. My family, staff, friends, and radio listeners are constantly telling me how much they love these products for bath, hair, laundry, and dishes. There is nothing like these factory-direct, big money-saving, triple-concentrated soaps anywhere. Get a free detailed catalog by calling 800-340-7091 or see them online at 5starsoap.com or Infowars.com. Let's talk to the owner of 5 Star Soap, Marty Schachter, and see what he has to say.
As founder and owner for over 63 years, people keep asking me, how's business? I'm happy to say our business is going down the drain. Call us at 1-800-340-7091 or visit our website, 5starsoap.com, for buying our 1 to 2 month soap sampler. Thank you.
Waging war on corruption. Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network.